So I finally caught up with the very, very talented James Colah, and we're going to talk to James about his music career spanning several decades. Would you like to say hi to everyone at Glow Time Radio?
Oh, first of all, hi Tony, it's great to talk to you.
And you too.
Thank you so much for having me on Glow Time Radio, it's such a thrill.
So James, let's go right back to the beginning of your career, and I understand from what I read about you somewhere that you really started off very young. So take me back to your first, you had a band at 12 years old, was it?
Yes, I had a band with my two identical triplet brothers. We started that band when we were 12 years old. My brother Mark is a bass guitarist and a lead vocalist, and my brother Peter is a guitarist. But you know, of course, Tony, I started studying the piano at 4 years old, so there were quite a few years before I actually went until we started the group.
That's incredible. So did you realised at 4 years old that you really liked the sound of music?
My brothers and I were third generation musicians, so music has been in the family obviously for years and years. So it was just an inevitable thing to become a musician, I think.
Yeah, now, even when you were at school, now 12 years old for our friends overseas, at 12 years old, you're just starting senior school.
That's correct.
And so what happened when you went to your headmaster and told him, or did he already know about your music?
No, he didn't know about our music, but of course, you know, we were the only identical triplet that's ever gone to that school. We had sort of celebrity status just because we were identical triplets.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? So, you know, a lot of schools, James, won't even allow triplets or twins to be in the same class.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Well, actually, that's an interesting point, because in primary school, my brothers and I were all in the same class, but in secondary school, my brother Mark and I were in the same class, and Peter was in another class. So they did decide to split us up in secondary school.
So tell me about what happened that you were going on tour.
That tour was when we were 16 years old.
Oh, okay. So 12 years old when you started the band.
That's correct. 12 when we started the band. And a really funny coincidence. Literally yesterday, I saw on Facebook that there's a Facebook page dedicated to the school that I went to, that my brothers and I went to.
What was the school?
It was just a basic comprehensive school called Wandsworth Boys School. Mm-hmm. And I found this page on Facebook, and I was contacted by a guy in my class.
How about that?
And the first thing he said to me was, and this really shocked me, he said, I remember seeing you play when you were 12 years old on the main school stage. And I thought, wow.
But that was incredible. I bet that felt great, knowing that you had touched someone with your music all that time ago, and he remembered it and contacted you now.
Well, actually, in fact, they were saying, do you remember the Colah triplets? And, you know, what are they doing now? And they said, just Googled James Colah, and I see he's now a very successful musician. So that was a real thrill for me. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get this tour? What was going on around that you then had to approach your headmaster to see if you could get time off?
Okay, well, my brothers and I were doing a residency in a pub in Kensington, of all places. And, you know, there are a lot of tourists around. And a Yugoslavian guy came up to us and said, how would you like to come over to Yugoslavia and play there? And then we can do some other gigs around. And, you know, at 16 years old, we said, yes. And that's how it happened, really.
So what happened when you went to the headmaster? I mean, this is a big deal. You're now, what you said, you're 16 or 17?
Yeah, 16 years old.
So you're coming up to your exams.
Yeah, exactly. Flunked all my exams, unfortunately. but remember, you know, our teachers used to come and roadie for us. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they used to help us get to our gigs and what have you. So they just knew from 12 years old that that's what we were going to be doing. So they actually left us alone. You know, if we didn't get our homework in on time, they just knew that we were incredibly dedicated to our music. And that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah, and so the other education, I guess, was secondary to your lifelong career. So what was the highlight there? The thing that stands out in your mind when the three of you were performing?
Well, of course, we had quite a bit of success. We were signed to CBS Sony Records for 2 years. We did some major venues here in the UK. We supported Shack Attack at, it was called the Venue in Victoria. We also got to the semi-finals of the Young Jazz Musicians of the Year when we were 16 years old. So that was quite an achievement. We did a big concert at the Shaw Theatre near Paddington.
I'm looking at the stuff that you've done and looking at some people that you played with, but even at that age, you were kind of moving over towards jazz.
We started off as a fusion band, as a jazz rock band.
Okay.
Yes, that's actually what we started off as. We were never a pop band. We were doing more pop music when we were signed to Sony Records, but we actually did start off as a jazz rock band. We were influenced influenced by, the groups by the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report, Chick Corea, Chick Corea.
Oh, yeah, and Weather Report.
Yeah, so that's actually what we were into from 12 years old.
And so at that time, I've got to say that at that time, it was all about pop music. The charts were everything, and, whether you reach number one. Now it's kind of a little bit confusing because there's radio charts, there's Billboard charts, it's kind of developed, so there are a lot of different ways that music can be heard. But at that time that you're talking about, the charts were everything. I mean, everything. The music was just coming out. New bands were coming out all the time. Is there a change between that scene then and what you see now, James?
Well, music changes, doesn't it? It always has its fads. I come from a real classical music background, so, quality music is really, really important to me. So I'm very choosy about what I listen to, I'm afraid, Tony.
So then you did work with, I saw people like Edwin Starr.
Yes, my brothers and I, we co-wrote a hit single called It Ain't Fair with Edwin Starr. Yes, and of course he's passed away now, poor Edwin.
Was that before or after his really huge hit War?
Oh, much after. Yeah, he just got us to arrange that, and we co-wrote that.
What would you like to work with?
Oh, he's a wonderful guy. Absolutely wonderful guy, yeah.
He was obviously talented. How did you hook up? Were you on the same record label? Or?
Actually, believe it or not, he at the time we were living in southwest London, and he was living close by. So he came along to one of our gigs, and he just came up to us and said, I love what you're doing. I'd love to work with you.
Oh, that's good. That's very cool, isn't it? So then I see also that you were working with Terry Wogan, and he had a huge hit show, didn't he? Terry Wogan's Friday Night.
That's right. I co-wrote and performed and produced the theme tune for his show, Terry Wogan's Friday Night Show.
Did he ever have you on the show?
No, he didn't.
So tell me, be absolutely truthful now, James. So you waited till Friday night, and every Friday night you turned it on just to hear your music.
Absolutely. You got it. You've got it spot on.
If that was me, James, I would too. There's no question about that.
Yeah, quite a thrill.
That's good. So now we're moving on. Now, did I get it right that the three of you performed with Tears for Fears?
I was in a group, just myself, supporting Tears for Fears. The group I was in were called The Adventures, and they were from Belfast. Okay. And they had quite a few hits. They were signed to Chrysalis Records. You may remember their hits Drowning in a Sea of Love, Broken Land, Feel the Raindrops. Yeah. And I was obviously the keyboard player in that group, and we supported Tears for Fears all over America and Canada. It was the biggest tour of that year. It was an absolutely incredible experience. And I was 25 years old at the time, so that's probably the highlight of my career, to be honest, because we were obviously playing stadiums, Red Rocks, 5 nights at the Radio City Music Hall in New York. We played the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness! Now you're over in my neck of the woods.
There we go. It was an incredible experience.
And you know what's funny about we close the loop here, because last week's interview was with Neil Taylor, who did the second lead in that. Right. And I said to him, you probably made me smile more than 1,000 times when I was listening to that. And there are certain pieces of music that you always take with you wherever you go. So now I'm looking on here, and Gus Dudgeon, well, for those of you that don't know Gus Dudgeon, he was the producer for Elton John.
He certainly was.
Tell me about that.
Okay, well, I only worked with him once, and I was hired to obviously play keyboards on a project of his. But yes, again, I was really young at the time, and what an experience it was. And I remember everything he said, and I'll keep that with me. And because yet again, isn't it sad? He passed away many years ago as well.
Yes, it is. It's really sad. We're getting to the point now where you want to get as much music as you can while they're still around. But I think the music transcends a person's life. It's the music is there forever. It's like having your name in a book or writing something. It's around forever. So now bring us more up to date, James. Now you've got a string of singles that you've done. So take me. Was Come With Me your first one?
My very first smooth jazz track was called Ocean Tide.
Okay.
And that was with the incredible saxophone player Mike Parlett, who's actually from the UK. He's been a friend of mine for about 25 years now. But he moved off to Los Angeles probably about 6 years ago. And, he's there on one of those incredibly talented visas, for an exceptional talent.
Oh, wow.
The States had to have Mike Parlett because he's such an incredible musician.
Yeah. So then you called it the James Colah Project, and then you had the Parlett Colah Project. Is that right?
That's right. The word project's in a lot of my tracks, just simply because I like to do so many different things. So that was called the Parlett Colah Project, and it was in 2009, October, and that was our first track called Ocean Tide.
Mm-hmm. And how did that do?
Oh, absolutely incredible. I mean, just between me and you, Tony, it's still actually my favourite track. I'm really, really proud of that track.
That's good.
I got to number one, so I can't complain.
So then after that, I can see that you've got Take Me Higher. Well, I know Take Me Higher is much more recent.
Yes.
So then after that, which was your next one?
The next one after that was called Better Days.
Okay.
That was the James Colah Project. So that was all my own music. Working with an amazing guitarist here in the UK called Ant Law. Now, Ant Law is a musician's musician. His most sort of famous thing he did was the Michael Jackson tour, the major tribute tour that went all around the world. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did. But of course I didn't know any of the musicians there. You just hear Michael Jackson and you just think of him.
For him to get that gig, so you can imagine, he's playing all the Michael Jackson tunes.